Well, hello and welcome back to Read Becca. We've reached that point in the year where we look back on the year past and look forward to the next year ahead and think about what we've done. And so I'm here to talk about my goals for 2024, what I set and how I did on that, and look forward to 2025. I really have debated about how and what I want to do goals, if I even wanted to do goals for 2025. So we'll talk about that, but let's start with where I'm at on 2024 first. I don't think that much is going to change in terms of these specific goals. In my reading, I do still have a little bit of the year left at the point that I'm filming, so some things could change in a very minor way. I don't think it will though. So overall, let's start out with the fact that I don't set a total challenge goal or number of books that I'm targeting for the past several years. That's not something in my mind or that I need to worry about. I read so much without really tackling that. But I think these priorities have shaped how I read and how much I read by reading the things that I was kind of excited about and allowing myself room to go with the flow. So I think that has led to this year being a very big success in terms of the reading volume. I am on track at this point to almost certainly exceed my highest reading in terms of page count for years in my adult life. So that's very exciting, though I don't really need to read volume, but it excites me that I have read so many books this year that have been wonderful and have enriched me. I've gotten to so many books that I've wanted to for years and finally tackled them. And that was as a result of the prioritizations that I set. So onward to the specific goals from 2024. So my first goal was reading nonfiction books by browsing the library at least once a month. And I'm considering this a massive success. So I guess forecasting. Overall, my goals for 2024 were massive success. The past couple months, that browsing aspect and picking up nonfiction really did fall off because of necessary reasons to do that. Things going on in life and overall mood, it fell off. But I read 40 nonfiction books as a result, primarily of this goal, because I was early on in the year and for most of the year, getting into the library for that once a month browse, picking out a book, and also seeing other books that were really exciting me. So I think my passion and love for nonfiction certainly was incited and inspired by this goal. Number 2 was BookTube influenced books. I wanted to read 12 of those. And again, I blew it out of the water. I read 28 that I tracked, and I think a couple others that I maybe didn't track. This was specifically not things that were in the general BookTube consciousness, but things I saw specific individuals talk about and then went and picked up. And I do want to continue to make that more of a priority in my reading life, that I will just see somebody talk about a book, get excited about it, and go pick it up. I want that inspiration to be a part of my reading diet. Number 3 was probably the most difficult and ongoing struggle for me as a reader, tackling series. So I wanted to target 12 series catch-ups up to current or finishes. And again, I very much succeeded at this. I hit 14 total, and that was 10 catch-ups to current and 4 series finishes. So I'm very happy with that, though I would say most of those happened at the end of the year in quarter 4 for the most part. But I am still excited about that, how much progress I got there, and especially given I tackled some longer series with more than one book to finish. The next one is my Read What You Own challenge, which was in fact the first challenge of the year. I wanted to target 24 in 24 reading from my own shelves right from the start of January, and I did succeed at that. But it kind of tapered off over the year, and that's always my problem. That's why I wanted to do a Read What You Own challenge. So I read those 24 as the first block of reading pretty much in about 3 months. And then over the course of the year, my total ended out at 55, which is not very impressive from first 3 months being 24. But I am still happy with that. 55 books from my own shelves is a great portion of books. That's more than I do typically read from my own shelves every year. So I'm quite happy with that, even though most of it was just based on the Read What You Own challenge. It means that the challenge worked. The next one was not really a numeric goal. It was reading some of my most recommended authors. These are specifically authors that people have recommended to me personally, rather than general BookTube mentions. And I had targeted David Mitchell, Sarah Waters, and Octavia Butler, as well as China Miéville. And I think 3 out of 4 is pretty good, so I'm considering this a success because I did read David Mitchell's Slade House, Sarah Waters, I'm in progress on The Little Stranger, and I'm sure I will finish in time for the end of the year, and Octavia Butler's Kindred. And I guess, spoiler for how I do on The Little Stranger, I haven't finished it yet, but all 3 of those are on track to be 5-star reads. So they were well recommended to me, and I'm glad I finally got to them. In fact, I very much intend to continue on with more from these authors in the new year in 2025. So next goal was kind of a numeric goal and kind of not. I wanted to participate in the BookTube prize and succeed at completing my books for that. I did indeed participate for 2 rounds in the quarterfinal and the final, and I read all 12 books. And the final goal for 2024 was the Ursula K. Le Guin prize. So this is my only kind of maybe, not quite a pass, but I'm going to give myself a success on this. We're getting the gold star because I wanted to target reading the previous year's nominees, not the current year's nominees. But I read about half and half, in fact. So that's actually good. So I read about the right number of books. So right now, my previous year's nominees for the Ursula K. Le Guin prize, I've read 5 out of 9. And the current year nominees, I've read 5 out of 8. So I'm majority done with both of those. So next year I can target catching up with the remaining 4 and 5 and actually be at about the same place. So I'm giving myself a check mark on that. I would say, as I mentioned up front, wild success. I think this really helped me focus on a lot of areas where I was either weak, especially in series, that is a running theme, or where I just needed to follow the inspiration more immediately than I do in order to really boost my reading enjoyment in my life. So I think that has been very, very successful. So let's move on to what I'm targeting for 2025, and you will see that a lot of it is certainly guided by what I learned from this year. Going into 2025 reading, I really debated whether I wanted to have numeric goals or how I could structure this to keep it light. I know Karen Reeder just recently did a fantastic video highlighting different ideas for non-numeric based goals so that you're not constantly chasing those numbers. But at the same time, I am a person who feels like goals kind of have to be measurable, which requires some sort of number in some way. So most of these are numeric, though I'm trying to keep it in a flexible method. But going into 2025, I also have for the first time wanted to set sort of a guiding principle in my reading that I want to have at the back of my mind through the whole year as I'm making reading decisions that does significantly shift my reading and what the overall makeup of my reading will look like, really, if I do keep it in mind successfully. And all of this could very well go out the window depending on mood or what's going on in the world in the new year. That may very significantly impact my reading. But for right now, I think this is realistic and attainable and within the bounds of what I can expect of myself, even if we go into a very hard year in 2025. So my guiding principle this year is going to be prioritizing sequels for obvious reasons. I want to tackle those series, and also what I'm calling backlist, though I'm not following the publishing definition of backlist. So that's my guiding principle, and we'll talk about that more as we go into the goals specifically. So the first goal, I would say, is my Read What You Own challenge. That's going to start the year. In January, I'm going to lock down, not allow myself the library or buying books, other than a few exceptions, which we'll talk about here. But I'm going to tackle, again, the year, so 25 and 25. Last year took me about 3 months. I kind of expect this is going to go a little quicker, mainly because exception number 1 is I'm going to allow myself to borrow audiobooks from the library for books that I own to hybrid or immersive read. I don't think that it doesn't like double count or anything, so I think that's a pretty fair exception. I have already been spending a huge amount of time at the gym and things like that, mindlessly scrolling to look at the Libby and Hoopla catalogs for books that I could specifically tag as hybrid reads. And I've already amassed over 50 of those available. So I could make this up just of hybrid reads and be successful there. So that's fantastic news. In fact, Hoopla, if you don't know, usually has more of the self-published and indie options. So I was even able to find several audios for self-published works that I have ebooks of. So I'm very excited about that. Editing/actual end of the year me here. I explained this last year, and so I kind of forgot to explain it again this year. But predominantly, I don't have a spending problem that I'm trying to address with Read What You Own, even with the handful of special editions that I get every year, just a couple. I do not spend that much on books. I buy mostly very low cost at charity sales and secondhand. So even though I do buy quite a lot of books, I don't spend a ton of money or beyond my means. But my issue is that I go to the library constantly. So I'm a very heavy library user, and that's great, but it means I don't get to the books on my shelves that are just sitting there staring at me and that I am also excited about. So I made sure on my final trip to the library of the year to print out a receipt so I would know exactly what my usage, my savings looks like by using the library. And as you can see, $4,053.59 is quite a lot of library use. So I will have read just over 170 books this year, and a significant portion of that, the vast majority of that, was from the library. So I would like to rebalance that a little bit more toward my own books rather than the library. Although I absolutely adore having a wonderful library system as a resource for myself, certainly. So anyway, that's the rationale. That's why I am focused so much on a Read What You Own challenge. Onward back to past me. So over the course of that, I want a significant portion of it to be made up of that priority list. So I haven't decided on a percentage. I'm thinking 50%, but I want it to be like at least 30%, I think, of backlist, sequels, and rereads. So what that means is I'm going to give you a specific example that will be part of my TBR here. And that is I recently bought the second and third book of the Area X trilogy. I already had Annihilation here, the first book. I have read this. So I will be rereading it and then going on to book 2 and 3. And then I'm also going to allow myself the exception for series that I can borrow books in series to finish out the series or continue with series that I have started as part of my Read What You Own. So I would be able to borrow book 4 from the library, which I do not have on hand. And that would allow me to finish this out. So this series, in terms of my goals, would be hitting that backlist, because what I'm counting there is authors I've read and loved, their previous or other works that are out there, published and available to read that I have not tackled yet. So it would also count as finishing a series if I read all 4 and a reread for the first book. Those are really the intents that I'm hoping to get to with those goals, because I have very many series on my shelves. I have lots of them that I've started and not progressed on with, so I want to reread the beginnings of those and continue on. I also have so many entire series on my Kindle, on my shelves. I've got omnibuses. I could probably do the entire Read What You Own challenge just with print omnibus editions, bind-ups of collections. So I have so many of those to tackle. So I really do want to prioritize getting those exciting series into my brain, because I just don't do it. I start series, I even think they're a favorite series, and I just never finish them. So onward to the next one. Number 2 is going to be library discovery. So I'm using the same tactic of 1 per month, even during the Read What You Own challenge. So this is my other main caveat, exception to the Read What You Own, is that I'm going to use the library for this discovery prompt to go browse the shelves and find something that I've not seen talked about across BookTube before. So this is about getting out of, not necessarily my comfort zone, but getting out of the bubble of BookTube, of constantly going to what other people are talking about and maybe starting the discussion about a book and exciting people about something new and fresh. The next goal, number 3, is squash 10 series. So this very much ties on to what we were talking about before. But as you can see from last year, I've lowered this goal to 10 rather than 12. And I think that's very doable. But the reason I've lowered that is because I want to tackle some really long series this year. Last year, the most books I read in one series, I think, was 4, and that was for finishing up Free Decline. And so I have several series that I've started and have 8, 10, 12 books in them. And I really want to either reread the entire series from the beginning or I want to start out and I have, 4 or 5 books left to read. So I want to be diving into those longer series. So I'm decreasing this number a little bit, but I still think it's very doable. The next one is my 5-star TBR, which you've already seen, but I'm gonna hold up here. So my 5-star TBR, I really want to read at least 5 of these books. And back to our goals. So 5 of these books, all of the fiction books, are authors that I've read and loved before, so they all would count as backlist, and Holy Sister is the finale of a series. So again, these are really tackling some of my goals. The next goal is a return from 2024, and that's my most recommended authors. So I think with the 3 that I've selected, I'm pretty well hitting and finishing the authors that I really get recommended just constantly. So that'll be great to have that done, basically knocking out all these authors that people have recommended me for more than a decade, probably. But number 1, you're going to have deja vu because it's China Miéville. So I obviously did not get to his work in 2024, but I still very much want to prioritize that when I'm in the right mood for something kind of dark and grim and weird. And the second one, I guess, also dark and grim and weird probably, I think, is Boris and Arkady Strugatsky. So they have been recommended to me so much. I think probably Snail on the Slope has been more recommended, but I know Roadside Picnic is a great entry point, and I'm aware it has recently come to be on the shelves at both of the library branches that I go to. So I can easily pick that up after my Read What You Own challenge. And then thirdly, Louise Erdrich. So again, this is a very beloved author to BookTube, certainly, but I've had so many people recommend her more speculative works to me, more so than her modern, much more popular works in the past couple years. So I think that's where I'm going to be diving in, and I do have multiple books on my shelves to get to as part of the Read What You Own. So easily I can tackle a couple of these. Next is kind of a BookTube goal, I guess, more so than a reading goal, and that's to do a quarterly reading project. I really dived into doing reading projects at the end of this year, 2024, and I overdid it a little bit. I had 4 reading project vlogs in progress at the same time, really, and that was just too much. I think I'm a person that needs to have one on the go at a time, and so I'm only going to target quarterly, but I would like to do more than that because I haven't made that a priority for my channel overall. I've done things here and there, but I really have all these ideas. I have massive amounts of lists in the notes on my phone, so all of these topics or themes or different sorts of projects that I could do as a vlog or as a recent reads wrap up on those themes together. And I just never get around to them, or I stay within the cycle of just doing my weekly catch up. And then finally, I think we have 2 sort of genre goals. So number 1, I really underread science fiction this year for whatever reason. Normally, I love science fiction, and it has so much to say, so much to comment on with our current world, but it was way down this year for whatever reason. I think that reason is probably because it feels a little too real. It's feeling very close to home, much of the dystopian and political themes of the science fiction that I read. So that's probably why I wasn't turning to it. But I still love it. I still love exploring those themes and ideas, and I need to turn back to it. So I'm not setting a number goal for this one, but I do want to keep an eye on my science fiction reading and be really incorporating that into my reading diet this year. And my last goal is also not really numeric, but probably as part of my Read What You Own as well. I want to very specifically target picking up some historical fantasy with a specific vibe to it. So in November, or even before November, I think, I really wanted to get to the Miss Percy's series, and this is kind of historical fantasy, very Jane Austen-esque, and that's probably the vibe that I'm going for. And I didn't quite get to it. The combo of post-election brain and also having a sick and dying cat really hit me, and it affected all my reading choices from November through the end of the year, really. It just caused chaos. So I was not getting to things, especially that were long. I was hybrid reading a lot, and these are not available for me to hybrid read. So they just weren't on track with what I was wanting to get to. But I did realize I have a ton of stuff on both my physical shelves and my Kindle that have this kind of vibe. And it's very appealing to me right now. Like, even though this is comforting and should have been the right vibe for that moment, the length was not it. But I do have so many things that I think now I am ready to dive wholeheartedly into in January, hopefully, assuming nothing significantly changes. And I really want to go tackle those because I have so many amassed, because this is a vibe that I very much like. So I think, so now that we finished with the goals for specific TBR, as we mentioned throughout, now I'm planning to get to Area X quartets. I'm planning to get to the Miss Percy trilogy along with some other historical fantasy. And I'm planning to get to my 5-star TBR, which I talked about in another video. So those are definitely specific books that I will be intending to target in January. So that is all for my goals, I think. Do you think this is attainable or reasonable at all? Do you think I'm going to hit my priorities or knock out the series as I'm hoping to? Or will I procrastinate until the end of the year? Again, it is a running theme. So I love the way that looking forward to a new year lets us feel like we can have a fresh start, and we have so much ambition for all of these goals and priorities that we may or may not succeed at. But we always look forward with hope and optimism, and I love that feeling of going into a new year. So I hope you have hope and optimism for 2025 as well. Let me know down below what your goals are. I love to hear about goals. It's one of my favorite things. So please tell me your list of goals in the comments, and good luck for the new year. I wish you the best at achieving all of those goals. Thank you all so much for joining me once again, and thanks so much for watching.